Hello again in this strange world, or is it strange really? Today I'm thinking about bicycles and silence. For a long time now I've been meaning to get back on my bicycle. Before I went to theological college I used to commute to work partly by bicycle, and it was very good exercise. And if I was at home I would ride for 5 miles or so to the main railway line to potter around with my camera and watch the trains go past for a while before heading back home. It was something which was good for my body and it was good for my head. Being at college got me partly out of that habit, and I've not really got back into it since coming here, except for a couple of trips early on. I lost a bit of confidence on the bike, and the nearby routes out of the built up area seemed busier and more dangerous than where I was before. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I went out on Tuesday on my bike, and it was lovely. Not least because there were far fewer cars on the road. It's something I notice now I live on a main road. It's relatively quiet. Strange. And yet what's happening is that we are taking away the noise that we have imposed on the world. If you go to the Netherlands, for example, where political decisions and road design have led to more people on bikes, you'll see how quiet a city can be. When I started at college, I always used to turn the radio on when I got back to my room because I like listening to the radio, but one day I realised I didn't need to. And letting myself exist in silence was a powerful experience. It went along with developing a practice of silent contemplative prayer, which fed me. In the Bible, silence isn't always a positive thing. It tends to be associated with death for obvious reasons. God speaks and things happen. Jesus is the Word made flesh. And silence in biblical worship is not very obvious. In 1 Samuel, for example, where Hannah prays silently, the priest Eli assumes that she's drunk. And the fact that Paul tells some of the early Christians to be quiet in worship rather suggests that the worship may have sometimes been quite chaotic and quite noisy. But in the early centuries of Christianity, some people found great value in silence. God goes beyond our physical existence, and silence reflects the lack of physical sounds. By the 5th century, one writer from what we'd now call the Middle East said, "God is silence." Silence keeps breaking out across the church. Even the branch of the church which is perhaps best known for its wordiness, the Protestant tradition, gave birth to the Quakers, a group now famous for their use of silence, of course. And silence is seen as something refreshing, which brings you close to God. Our Methodist tradition grew up on a diet of hymns and preaching, hardly silence. And perhaps that's as much as anything reflecting Charles Wesley, the hymn writer, and his brother John, the preacher. I remember turning up at a church in a different circuit where the steward gave the notices and then said there'd be a moment of silence before we start our worship, at which point the organist struck up. We like to fill our silences. We like to do stuff. And doing stuff is good, don't get me wrong. Preaching and singing are good things to be involved in. But we do like to fill our silences. In the world outside my window here, there is more silence than usual. And silence out there is used more and more as a kind of religious ritual. Think of the remembrance silence, or silence being kept at the beginning of a football match. The world out there feels a need to keep silence to mark something important. And perhaps in that there's a role for us in the church to be a kind of priest for the world, to draw the world close to God, to show how that need for silence can be a need for the holy, for the other, the strange world of God, and how in the silence as well as in the speaking we can find God. If you can, take the chance to leave a space around the words. Take in the silence, whether by bicycle or not. More on silence next time. God bless. See you soon.